Welcome back to the second video of this series that we have going on, rebuilding this Scat Pack. If you haven't seen the first one, go check it out in my YouTube, that's CG Fastlane. Things have taken a big turn with this build process. I'm just going to get to it. The motor has to come out, ladies and gentlemen, and that is due to a melted piston on cylinder number 5. So let's dive right in and start pulling this thing out. So backtracking a bit, I forgot to show this in the last video, but this is what I found. So on the driver's side cylinder head, you can see on cylinder 5, it is super chewed up. But there was nothing in the cylinder itself as to what would have caused that. The valves are fine, the spark plugs are fine. I figured it just evacuated itself out the exhaust port, and that was that. So I didn't notice this because when I'm leaning over the top of the car, I can't see the actual top of the piston. Well, sure enough, right at the top of the piston, it blew a chunk out, melted itself. A normal piston is supposed to look like this. So yeah, that's not good. We're gonna need to take that out and replace it with a new one. Just some extra steps. Now we gotta flip it over, take the oil pan off, and assess the damage from underneath. Here's the piston out of the motor. We have a closer look at to what happened. It did end up breaking the ring. That is what actually makes a tight seal on your cylinder bore and gives you what's called compression. But right here at the top, it cracked right on the side. It just blew chunks everywhere. It causes this pitting and the pitting on the top of the cylinder head. We have a new one on the way. Once it's here, we're gonna throw it in, and then it can go back in the car. Finally, after all the snow we've had, the shipping decided to drop off the piston. Time to put this thing into the motor. But first, we gotta put the old bearings onto the new piston. We are gonna reuse them in this circumstance because we're not rebuilding the entire motor, and the bearings actually check out and look pretty good. So let's put them on. And for those of you that don't know what a bearing is, that's this guy right here. It's very, very soft metal. And it literally just sits right here in the journal. And then this goes right onto the crankshaft. And it spins on there. Basically what that is a lubrication barrier for the oil. So there's no metal on metal contact on the crank. I'm just gonna wait for Fabian to get back with the assembly lube. We're gonna bolt it in, go on with the oil pan, if UPS decides to show up. other torque wrench is broken right now, our 3/8, so we're using, what even size is this? 1 inch? A 1 inch torque wrench, which is way overkill for this, but it'll work. Finally, UPS never showed up. We just got this from O'Reilly's. Thankfully, they had one in stock. Before I go any further, I want to prep the head and make sure I have a good clean sealing surface for that head gasket to really bond so the coolant and oil doesn't mix. So to do that, I'm going to perform a process called decking the head. And I'm just going to take this block, which is a perfectly flat surface, with some sandpaper, and simply go back and forth. Now that I have one of the heads decked, time to go in with the lifters. Got brand new cylinder head bolts because you can't reuse the old ones. Bolts like to stretch when they're under a lot of pressure. And stretch bolts means probably a leaky head gasket when you retorque it, so putting new ones in. Finally got them torqued with this mega beast of a torque wrench. Not them, just the one side. Next side is going on, literally just repeating the process. So I will see you when we are putting the rocker assembly in. The heads are bolted on and torqued to spec. Along with the valve train, we have that all put in. Now it's time to just put the rest of the car together. But do me a favor, go hit the subscribe button, help my back pain. So since we went all the way down to a bare block, we had everything taken out. Here at the shop, we actually have this machine right here, which is a injector tester and cleaner. Look at that dirty water. I went ahead and cleaned all the injectors. They should be flowing like they did from the factory. I tested them here. All our levels were good. They should be even across the board. No 10% difference. If it's a 10% difference, that means it's a bad injector. You can get your injectors cleaned and tested here for $300. That means it gets all new seals, filters, the whole nine, and flow tested. So you know that your injectors are working where they should be. are priming the coolant system. This is called vacuum filling. It checks for leaks. Like we already found one. I forgot to tighten the drain plug. But see, it's sucking down all the hoses. And this is the maximum efficient way to fill a car with coolant that's been completely drained. It gets every airtight spot in the motor. Right, we are in the car. We're getting ready and set up for the first ever crank with the new stuff. We have the injectors unplugged. I don't want it to start on this one. I just want to get oil pressure up to where it needs to be before I do anything. And with that, I'm checking it with the scanner. I just read some codes. I do have one fault. That is for the injectors. We're just going to escape that. All right, we got our oil pressure sensors that I want to watch here. Now we're going to give her a crank. You want to check up front, make sure it don't spray fuel or anything. Ready?
Two hours later.
There it goes. I'm getting oil pressure. Just so we don't kill the battery. I do have a jump pack on there, but just so we don't kill the battery, we're going to stop there. We do see oil pressure, so now we're going to plug the injectors in and give her a fire. After a nice commercial break, the car is running. The car's running after a short commercial break. No codes. No codes.
No codes. Turn the heat on.
Max 7. All the heat. We turn the heat on so we can cycle the coolant through the heater core, and it helps bleed the system a lot faster. Last you guys saw, the car was running, and it was running really good on the rack. Everything was perfect and fine on that first startup. But that was a cold start, meaning it had no heat in the engine whatsoever, and it was running perfectly fine at that higher RPM. But what happened, as soon as the car started to warm up, it started to buck, and it started to choke on itself, and it started to try to kill itself. What was causing this issue? We were perplexed as well. Everything went fine. Everything was sound. We double-checked, triple-checked everything. So we had a tuner come over and check out some stuff for us. And he ran the logs, and he noticed that this temperature sensor right here was all out of whack. But when we replaced that with a good sensor, like we have in here now, it still does the same exact thing. Tuner came back the next day and noticed some other things that was going on in with the camshaft assembly, and diagnosed that the cam might be off by a couple, like we're talking hairs, guys. So it's gonna need a tune, and maybe it has an aftermarket cam in it. Maybe it's not a full stock grind cam. So moral of the story, let's get OEM Mopar parts if we are going completely stock. Just go to your local Mopar dealer and get the parts and save the hassle of having to do all this. But at the end of the day, the car will be running great. Everything's sound. I've driven it around the block actually, and it drives perfectly fine. It's just at idle that it tries to kill itself, and it runs really bad. And the tuner completely agrees with everything that we have done, and he said nothing on our end was actually done wrong. So he's coming back. He's going to have it tuned. We'll have that all in part 3. The car will be driving in part 3, I promise, guys. So that is the end of this second video. We are almost to 400 subs. Please hit that subscribe button, get us to 400, and I will see you guys in part 3, and we will go take this baby for a spin around the block, and I'll actually let you hear it when it's sounding completely healthy. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.